Monday, 31st of July 2017 and Beyond by Melissa Demovsky. From my understanding, the concepts of spiritualism, enlightenment, perception of reality, psychological connections to throughout history and knowledge that has been researched through many different practices have an uncanny similarity in which there is an evident process of trial and error. In this book, I delve in deeper towards the mysteries of life, its understandings, its lessons, and more importantly, anticipating the art of repetition at understanding patterns in one's life. Methods that are passed on throughout the ages, compiled with systematic procedures of how matters of life are understood and dealt with, give us little to ponder about due to its automatic resolution. However, the best teacher of all in the art of life is that of experience. Theories learnt through observation, analysis, historical patterns throughout the ages have given us the foresight to engage in esoteric practices throughout qualitative or quantitative research, and using the same mechanisms towards spiritual matters. History, religion, psychology, politics, philosophy, literature, art, music, and science. These subjects all work hand in hand at attaining further knowledge and insight into the unknown, and to understand something that is commonly referred to as misunderstood, misinterpreted, and not looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Understanding the relationships and connections between each subject will further our horizons at understanding why things occur the way they do, the similarities in patterns and the similarities in approaches to collating said information and intelligence. Once we grasp and have a firm understanding on this, we can approach new ideologies and theories with a much more ease than we come to realize and acknowledge in this lifetime. Dependent on how we approach a situation says a lot about the outcome that we intend to achieve. With that being said, it leaves us with the contention of the power of intention. The inner truth serum will foretell the true thoughts of the individual. It is important in respect to this we must stay genuine to ourselves. It is fundamental to uphold the virtue of honesty within us, as this promotes a stronger sense of self-worth. Maintaining our own powerful and passionate convictions regarding a situation, individual, or idea implies that we are grounded, have a process of logic and reasoning that is unique in respect to our experiences, is important in the journey of our own spiritual development in this lifetime. Through creativity and through logical cognitions, which is a process and ability that manifests over time, we can learn to appreciate the act of trial and error. With positive intentions, we can gain a high ground of credibility, and in respect to our own self-image towards society, we desire to have a sense of rawness and authenticity about ourselves that shows that we live a life free from bias and adhering to a non-conformist ideology towards materialistic ventures of today. Through the power of intention, there is a subtle connection towards the fable The Boy Who Cried Wolf. The connection and link is quite uncanny in a sense where the boy would yell wolf when there was a wolf in his presence, and then he proceeded to use the same joke about that a fair few times. Over time, people stopped believing in him, and thus his credibility and reputation of being honest and truthful no longer existed. The title of being reputable no longer applied to him, causing society to shun at him at every whim of a struggle. That being said, we can link the story with the power of intention in a sense where if one has a negative intention towards a scenario, relationship, situation, or idea, the credibility and stigma that that person is reliable loses its form, and it becomes harder for that person to gain his or her credibility easily, in turn, making others suspicious of his or her motives and intentions. There is a great importance on establishing a positive sense of self, as this radiates in the now and in the future. Through our initial attitudes and our own intentions towards ourselves and our lives, we pave the way in which intention impacts us in a great way. Principally speaking, we go into the notion that fate is predetermined, in a sense that where we could mould the path through the minor decisions and choices we make in life, that we may consider meaningless at the time, is now extremely important in what makes or breaks an individual idea, situation, or event. The smartest form of conversation isn't by retaliation or thinking of what to reply with next, but actually understanding the subtle reasons behind what was said by the other person. Understanding is deeper than knowledge. Background experiences equip us with fundamental knowledge about a situation, event, and occurrence, sometimes without taking into consideration the rationale conclusion, which you sought from removing yourself from a situation to see the bigger picture. It's easier to provide a rebuttal to an individual's point of view regarding a topic, but harder to actually understand why they have provided such an answer. This is why we must consult and be emotionally intelligent and open to many interpretations of one scenario. An example of this is through an object, place, or event in which several people will have several different interpretations of their experiences towards that object, place, or event. One will have a positive experience, the other a negative one. We have to acknowledge that no two experiences and interpretations will be the same, and this is where we must not be ignorant to another's point of view. We have to accept that there is a thought process that is correct in nature besides our own, and to accept what someone else is saying and not cut them off mid-sentence because their responses aren't matching our own. We don't have to ultimately agree to what they're saying, but we must acknowledge what they have to share, as this will progress humanity in a vast way where we can communicate openly with no fear of being ridiculed or embarrassed. Not having the opportunity at expressing oneself will breed resentment toward the person they are wishing to express themselves to. This proves toxic towards intimate relationships and towards friends, families, and even professional associates. We then proceed to navigate towards a path that is reserved, inhibited, limited, and we in turn become secretive individuals, not ultimately being trusting to anyone that enters our own circle. This proves a great detriment towards one's self-expression and one's sense of complete individuality. One becomes introverted and often bottles things up that they wish to confide in with another human being, and this proves toxic as this damages the person's ability to express them normally and openly. Mustering all that courage to confide in an individual is important and necessary, and something that needs to be completely respected, as it is with sheer will and exposure of one's vulnerabilities that they choose to reveal such a fact or opinion of themselves. Acknowledgement of these individuals needs to be recognized. We need to be free from fear, and most importantly, we need to accept ourselves and our own strengths and flaws. This will enable us to accept ourselves ultimately, so that we can progress on our spiritual path, and to open up new gateways into the endeavor of self-expression and towards supreme spiritual wisdom. Furthermore, it is imperative that through the collection of said intelligence, we need to refrain from some stereotypical behavior and ill-conceived stigmas handed to us generationally through fear. In other words, we need to remain open-minded to allow professional, clear, and rational cognitive processes to enter within. Being free in mind is crucial and pivotal at opening the gates of intellectualism and to allow spiritualism to enter through. It is also important to point out what was common knowledge now was once taboo, weird, not accepted throughout society, and there were once heavy punishments for such prohibited artifacts of knowledge being learnt, taught, practiced, and understood. Even the awareness of such principles and intellectual concepts was once something only the elite were given access to attain. Time certainly is of the essence in attaining knowledge, intelligence, experience, and insight into civilization that was once previously excused. Fear is only instilled through and towards theories, concepts, ideologies, and reasoning towards things that are unknown and not understood because of the general idea that what is not understood should be generally feared. Conceptually wise, it creates the ideology that if we do not know something, we should fear it, which is merely an opinion to a regard, but is not ultimately truth. The sheer principle of ambition at work is a desire to achieve something and do better by everyone else, and to do better by yourself in anything you're ambitious about regarding personal, professional, and social aspects of your life. You're constantly trying to outshine the person who is expected to do better than you. Without competition, there's no ambition. The typical thought that we support and give kudos to the underdog and wish them no failure is at large. There is greater respect and recognition towards that person at first believes they have no hope of achieving their dreams in their respective fields. However, within ambition, the first must be a thirst and a desire to win. The desire of believing in yourself, even if you give yourself a false sense of thinking you could potentially win something or potentially achieve something, there is enough for a person to complete their mission respectively. Truth is, anyone can do it. With the correct logical thought and reasoning, anyone can achieve something great in their lives, which at the end of the road, and they will be pleased with and content with what they have achieved. No matter what is going on in a person's life, they best know that with determination and a little bit of cunning will present itself enough progression in what they hope to achieve. And as they end their journey in a quest for success, they will be in awe of the lessons and steps of which they took to get there. Of course, with the thought that's sitting there and doing nothing, one is keying themselves into believing that something positive will come from it. Patience is a virtue, yes, but once patience has been achieved, one must take reasonable action in order to make a dignified and intelligent decision regarding many situations and aspects of their lives. Through this, and through the quest for ultimate glory, we notice the inevitable emotion of jealousy. Jealousy can cause some to act in cruel, heartless, and inhumane ways. Jealousy breeds hate, breeds resentment, and most of all, breeds evil. On this earth, however, there must be a balance. Too much love breeds jealousy and evil, for one can and will compete with another on whom loves someone more than the other in matters of the heart, or is subjective to corrupting behavior in matters of the professional sphere. In order to combat this as humanely as possible, there first must be equality on this earth for us to succeed. There first must be a deep understanding and unconditional love being given towards oneself and towards others. Embracing and accepting multiple viewpoints and outcomes to one scenario enables one to think outside the square, and this promotes creative thought and improvisation through seeking multiple resolutions to one scenario. It allows one to control their own destiny, as this would be the only way wherein one would control their own destiny. Earlier mentioned in this book, it was said that fate is predetermined. However, this would be only exception in which we can control our future through expansion of thought from within. Through the enforcement of fear imposed by superior figures of society towards the vast majority, it makes it easier for them to control minority groups with a greater sense of ease by profiling, whether it be racially, religiously, economically, culturally, and socially. An example of this theory is imagine a cupboard that has sections with boxes. We can see how much more effective it is to separately see what is inside each of those boxes. Thus, the boxes become thus making those boxes easy to segregate and control. Once we mentally break down these borders, the boxes become just one box, and we can see the evident expansion of segregated minorities. We can no longer see a concept in its sheer uniqueness, but the uniqueness fades out through separating stereotypes. With that being said, the expansion of groups caused diversity in multiple religious and racial backgrounds, with the common goal by not allowing superior figures to control them. There is an obvious understanding that there is an indeed strength in numbers, and the alliance that is formed through split groups caused by the segregator is formed. We can see the principle of the term cause and effect. When segregated groups come together and bear ignorance to the stigma imposed on them by authoritative figures, we can see that there is a freedom of thought that allows them to think for themselves and think logically and rationally towards a corrupt stigma that was enforced without any real substance to justify exactly why that segregation needs to take place. We can evidently and blatantly see that there is a mechanism at controlling the general population exactly how they see fit, and essentially putting the general population and the general public controlled through puppet strings. The more we engage and test common judgments from authoritative figures of history, the more we can engage in freedom of thought, and to have a firmer grasp of independence in terms of our cognitive habits and patterns. Also, through questioning and expanding our own thought process, we give pressure to authoritative figures to be wiser, be more authentic in their own strategies towards power, and in how they control society through the general practices and unique leadership styles. It adds pressure where pressure is needed most, and implies that intelligent thinking is more reflective of a society that bears a true representative towards its citizens. Those that respect authority must not respect blindly, where they find they have to compromise their own ideals and morals to appease an ideology that will most likely die out over time, as most ideas throughout the ages are described as fads or trends. It is important to have well-established processes of morale and virtue, as this enables you to understand general concepts of ideas more fastidiously and effortlessly. I myself have noticed a pattern throughout history in which controversial ideas have been accepted through mass support, through numbers, and through persistence. For example, the right for women to work was once considered taboo in Western cultures, now is considered the norm. Perseverance in conviction of a desired intention at the search for equality is explicitly displayed through this pivotal moment in history. Between ideologies being frowned upon by society and to its general acceptance, there is a transition that must occur through cognition and even a curiosity by the individual in raising a contention within them. What will life and society be like if this idea were to be imposed? The question of what if plays on the individual's mind, as repetition in one's life creates one to see life as predictable, mundane, and knowing the outcome of a situation before one is aware of a situation. The concept of a new idea is exciting, even thrilling to one as to create, encourage, accept, and impose change. Playing the devil's advocate is essential at all debates, as this broadens our horizons on theories that are generally not accepted by the majority. It questions what we already know and also inquires at the concepts that we are not aware of as yet. It implements new strategies and lines of thinking, encouraging us to be smarter individuals. It enables growth through consultation. Being a master at understanding concepts at a grand scale through numerous endeavours at trial and error, with adherence to what is being understood and developing discipline and self-restraint, is important towards living a life that is enriched with appreciation towards the small things in life. Through triumphs, through tribulations, through tests, through the questioning of one's patience towards something that at the beginning is appealing to them, to then decipher just how worthy and how important attaining that outcome is to them. Ascertaining this wisdom is only gained through patience, as one must be patient enough to go through the motions of earning that right or desired outcome. Through acceptance of one's abilities and strengths, and through accepting presents with it an open door towards third eye thinking, in which natural intelligence stems through complete introspection, enabling intuition. Thoughts and even explanations towards life's greatest mysteries will come naturally to them, and this is only ever properly achieved through being free from biased thought and through releasing pigeonholed, controlled cognitive concepts that have been previously conditioned. Oftentimes, people take situations, people, and possessions for granted. We see on a constant basis that people always crave and desire for bigger, better, faster, and richer material possessions than what they can actually afford. There is enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Economically, the world is struggling due to the constant greed that is imposed by a consumer in the endeavour for materialistic bliss. The expectation and demand for better is always at large, and people in the process miss the concept of appreciation and miss our progress spiritually if we're still in the materialistic phase of life, as we need to show respect and consideration that in life there are invisible levels towards the spiritual awakening of individuals, and this is something that needs to be wholly duly respected and acknowledged. It is important that respecting and appreciating what you have as opposed to sulking on what you don't have will in turn enable an individual to grow spiritually, as self-restraint is food for the soul. Socrates believed in the principle of self-restraint over following hedonistic principles of life. The discipline one instills in themselves, logical reasoning and pure unbiased cognitive thought, evidently will promote an individual to gain a higher spiritual awareness and increase their intuition as they are willingly made self-aware towards the tests of the world and to find a way, through disciplined patience, acknowledgement of their own thoughts and actions, which will advance them on their spiritual journey in this lifetime and beyond. Through the establishment of this process, we enter into the next stage towards spiritual wisdom. We no longer see ourselves as flesh, but we see ourselves in soul. The essence of one's soul is incorporated through three distinctive parts: the mind, the body, and the soul. Once we have conquered the mind through expansion and deep intellectual introspection, and once we have mastered the art and temptation of falling into the trap of materialism in the concept of body, we can embrace the reward of engaging through soul. Understanding then becomes effortless, and once spiritually aware individuals experience an awakening within them, their spiritual power and what it unleashes becomes difficult to control, as there is an overwhelming surge of power and high vibration energies that seep through. And that's the soul's way of communicating within and expressing inner power that individual has, a deep understanding and knowing things beneath the surface without rational thought. The stages one takes to achieve greatness depends on the patience and diligence of what one is willing to do to achieve what they endeavour to accomplish. Effort is imperative at attaining a goal, albeit tangible. Resourcefulness is mandatory, and exercising all avenues at compiling information that will aid one in attaining their personal or professional goal proves necessary. The prime significance of the soul is to engage in the dimension that enters the unknown, and to embrace and embark on a spiritual journey that will provide all the answers to life one is searching for. Provided that one overpowers the mind, combats the body, and incorporates the lessons and tests learnt and understood by the duality of mind-body, we can see a pattern and a firmer understanding of what the soul has in store for us in this lifetime and beyond. Understanding ourselves and our true divine purpose in this lifetime is crucial to living a life that is ultimately fulfilled in soul. We are constantly evolving and progressing in humanity, so we must not turn a blind eye in matters concerning ourselves and what mark we leave on civilization. Remaining egotistical and failing to adhere to a motto of being an eternal student proves our progress into understanding spiritualism and its meanings is stunted, and we won't actually achieve our full potential in this lifetime. Despite the relationships we have with others, the most important relationship we can have is with themselves. Knowing your strengths just isn't enough. It's important to acknowledge your flaws and to either amend them if they can be amended, or accept it if that is an attribute that is beyond your control. My own perception of an audiology I viewed on YouTube titled Conversations with God, I can see on a scale that is proportionate to our intelligence and awareness. A master of self and of their own soul, pain does not necessarily mean suffrage, but an experience of an emotion, feeling, or event that we have not experienced before. Albeit unpleasant at the time, we have free will to not allow pain and suffrage to get the best of us. Rather, we welcome and embrace the opportunity at experiencing an expression of an action that we are not familiar with, and thus we are able to separate and distinguish what is pleasure and what is pain. Experiencing pain and suffrage is fundamentally food for the soul, in which the master of oneself is able to define that as such, and to develop discipline which is required for the expansion of a master's quest towards this endeavour of spiritual enlightenment and attaining at a higher level of spiritual wisdom. Acknowledging this process proves mandatory, in which the master is seeking a deeper level and phase into their own soul, and unlocking their potential that their soul desires for and has the wisdom to ascertain. Happiness is not created as a result of conditions, but as the stigma and thought behind them. Each soul has separate ideologies into what they deem as happiness. However, we must take into account that certain conditions are created as a result of happiness. Simply being and existing is what produces experience, and it develops insight into multiple expressions of perception and interpretation. Life is ultimately and evidently an experience. The world is our stage, and events and situations that occur to us are nothing short and nothing less than performing acts. And how we respond in times of crisis and exterior stresses define our character and mold the way of who we are and who we will become.